Good morning and welcome to my morning anxiety help briefing. So today the main topic of our subject is going to be about overeating. But to start with, let's just recap about the primitive brain versus the intellect. If you've been watching the last two videos, you'll know that we tend to operate from a primitive brain, which is a fight-flight response. And this is going to really kick in at times like this when we have a lot of news feed with difficult things to cope with. Mornings seem to be the worst time for coping with anxiety and fear. Although it can still come in waves as the day goes on. So try and really be aware of when you're in the primitive brain, that's when your anxiety is going to be at its kind of height. Now, if you can be aware of that, and you can really know that that's what's happening to you and move into your intellect, because the intellect is the part of the brain that will help you to be rational and reasonable and reason ways to manage your time during the day. Because obviously living in isolation or in quarantine with others or just alone is challenging. We're tribal creatures. Human beings want to be with people. So it is a really, really big challenge for us with this. Now, I want to come to what I was going to talk about today. I have been asked to look at overeating and how our habits get quite out of control in times of stress. So here we all are. We're all at home with hopefully well-stocked cupboards, hopefully not overstocked cupboards. But the important thing is to be aware of when you get into famine or feast, because what happens to the human primitive brain, the fight-flight response, is we tend, from cavemen times, we're very much aware that we will go into a state of feast if we think it's going to run out. And this is all quite unconscious. So it's really important to be aware of that so that one can actually, realistically say, I have got enough. I can make it last. So that's one way that it affects us. The other way that happens is, of course, that we just lose all sense of control over ourselves and our eating habits and just don't care and actually just want to just eat. It doesn't matter. And my advice to you with that, again, is that you are in the primitive brain at that stage. And it's really important to just try and be aware of it, come out of it, make a plan, set a daily menu. If you can prepare food for lunch or for evening meal or for the next day, do so and stick to it. I think evenings often are the worst times for people. We get to the end of the day, we're tired. It's been stressful, especially in these current conditions. And so we tend to sort of let go, relax and think, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to eat or drink. That's the other thing. And that is also not helpful for us, because when these things get out of control, it'll make us not feel so well, not so good. It's also not good for our immune system. So I want to talk about emotional overeating. And it's interesting because there is a group like Alcoholics Anonymous that is actually called Overeaters Anonymous. And they also operate under the 12-step process. Now, if you don't know what the 12 steps are, they are a system whereby members of Alcoholics Anonymous can learn to cope on a daily basis with their alcohol addictions. And it's the same with food, because we will find we're addicted to certain types of food, certain times of day when we overeat. And what we have to do is be aware of this. And with the overeating, think of the first step. And the first step in AA and for overeaters is just acknowledging that one is out of control around food. And this then gives one permission. It's like you can sit back and think, yeah, I really do get out of control around food. Don't beat yourself up about it. Be aware of it, because the more we're aware of these things, the more we can find a solution. And that'll move you out of your primitive brain into your intellect, because what we have to do is find the solution. Another thing that we tend to fall into is instant gratification, and it's always probably going to be with sweet things like chocolate and cakes and biscuits, and they give a kind of quick fix. But of course, the long-term outcomes of that are not good. They're not good for our health. They're not good for our weight. But at the same time, I suggest you don't get hung up too much on your weight. What you need to maintain is a healthy weight through a healthy diet. And if you want to have the treats and the biscuits, cake, chocolate, then I think it's really important that you limit yourself and try and get into that intellect to ration what you can have in terms of treats. And maybe the same with alcohol. If you are having alcohol in the evening, to actually try and just limit yourself to 1 or 2 glasses. It's not easy, I know. So with this acknowledging a higher power, it's about acknowledging it one day at a time. So that, first of all, in a sense, get through till lunchtime and think, yes, I've done well this morning. I've taken care of myself. I'm aware when I'm getting into fight flight, and I'm nearly, I've got to lunchtime. And then get yourself to tea time, and then get yourself to supper time. And that seems to be the dangerous point for most people, because then it's like we're kids let out of school and we just want to stick our heads in the pantry or the fridge. Obviously, you can tell that I understand about this, because it's something I do, and I know an awful lot of people do. But it's the awareness of what we're doing and why we're doing it that can help you manage it. And also giving yourself permission to fail. That's okay. But what we have to do is not beat ourselves up about it. Just start again. We've got to be really good parents to this small child inside of us that just wants to let everything go and go to the, extremes. So we have to really, really manage ourselves in the best way possible. And I want to, just before I finish today, just go over again questions to ask yourself when you're aware that you might be in your primitive brain and you can feel the anxiety rising up and you start the what ifs. Just start thinking to yourself, am I jumping to conclusions? What alternatives are there to my belief? Or am I assuming my view of things is the only one possible? Am I asking questions that have no answers? Am I expecting myself to be perfect? That's something I think we all do. And another thing we do is, am I worrying about things and how they should be instead of accepting and dealing with them as they are? And am I assuming that I can't do anything to alter my situation? Well, we can do things to alter our situation, because we can manage our time within the home. We can manage our time within ourselves. We can find ways to divert ourselves, to find that parental discipline, to parent that child part of us, and to find other ways to feed ourselves. There are many ways to feed the soul. You could start a daily journal. You could write a blog about how you're feeling, because this is an amazing chance to go within and to really discover who you really are and how you cope when we've all got our backs up against the wall. There's also another thought that you can ask yourself when you're away or in the primitive brain, which is, are you predicting the outcome? We all suddenly become mind readers and psychic instead of experimenting with the outcome. We get very caught into what if it happens to me? What we have to do is do the practical, logical things to make sure that we keep ourselves in the best health and safe. And as I've said before, that's really important to follow the directives of your local governments, of your local councils, and also to really bear in mind that the health professionals really need us to actually abide by these rules. They also don't want us to sort of eat all the wrong foods or drink all the wrong drinks and end up having heart attacks and strokes, because that's just going to put more of a burden on the health system. They really want us, so for their sakes, they're putting themselves in the front line. So if we can just actually acknowledge that, stay home, stay separate, don't have contact with people unless it's over the internet, by phone, by video phone, whichever your method is. And find ways to feed your soul. There's a line in Shakespeare about, if music be the food of love, play on. Find something else that is your food. Find a hobby, a love of music, a love of poetry, a love of literature that feeds your soul. Thank you so much for being here today and spending time with me. And if you haven't had time to watch this now, it will, of course, be available to play back at any time during the day. Please share for friends if you think they may benefit from it. And tomorrow, I'm going to talk again about how to manage anxiety, but also looking at it from a different angle, because, of course, life goes on through these troubling times, and people are still experiencing grief, trauma, loss. So I thought it would be a good idea to actually look at how one copes with all these things when they're on our plate at the same time. So wishing you all well, and God bless you all. Thank you.